Здравейте, аз съм Пламен Андонов, а това е българският криптоканал.
Cool.
Okay, so we are live. So this is Steven. He speaks Bulgarian. So, добър вечер, Steven. How are you?
Oh yeah. I wish I spoke Bulgarian.
when we chatted a bit before the stream, you mentioned that your best friend is from Bulgaria, from Sofia, actually, the capital. So, can you give us a bit of information about him? Like, what is he like? Where did you meet, and so on?
Yeah, for sure. I know Bulgaria well, thanks to him. So I've never visited Bulgaria. I would love to someday. But I was born and raised in the middle of the United States in a small town. And I also went to university there. And I met a guy there at university. We were studying computer science together. And he happened to be an international student from Bulgaria who was living in the United States. And so
that's crazy. I'm really sorry. I must ask, what year was that? Around which years of?
I was in college from 2004 to 2008.
Okay, because I'm just thinking from the perspective of what year it was, because in Bulgaria, we used to be a communist country, and it was extremely hard to leave the country, like extremely hard. Not only that, but also Bulgaria is, Eastern Europe. Eastern Europe is known for being poor side of the part of the world. So going to the States at like earlier than 2000s, earlier than 90s was almost impossible unless you have very heavy government connections or something. In the 2000s, it's like more possible without being some person next to the president or something like that. But yeah, I get it. I just want to get a perspective.
Yeah, I always got the impression that it was kind of a special opportunity for him. And he was very much citizen of the world, has lived in many different countries since, and we're still close friends to this day. Now he lives in Amsterdam, and so I've been over to Europe and visited him a few times, and we keep in close touch.
That's great.
So he was there with me through my journey of discovery in Bitcoin and internet tech as well. Yeah.
Nice. Wait. So we've been friends for the past like 15 years, yeah? Over 15 years, 7?
That's wild. It has been that long.
What's his name, sorry?
His name's Alex. Yeah.
Alex. Okay, so hi Alex, if by any chance this video gets to you. We're happy that you're making our country famous, and we're proud of you. Okay, so Bitcoin. Bitcoin, we already said the word, so let's dive into it. Please tell us, share your personal Bitcoin story. Briefly, I told you just before we started that I was one of these people that found out about Bitcoin very early. I was just one of these internet groups. We had people from the States, from Canada, from Germany, from all over the world doing some online stuff. And these people were into the circles that are into, techs like that. And there were smarter people than me that saw the potential in Bitcoin back then. Apparently, I was too young or too stupid or something. And I was like, oh yeah, Bitcoin price went up, I should have bought, that's it. And I was a bit late, just like everyone is thinking. Always I've been late, even though I've been saying like if Bitcoin succeeds and it becomes what it could become, it fulfills its potential, you will never be late. Even in 100 years it will be just Bitcoin doing its thing for you.
I agree. I think that's well said. It's still early right now, in my opinion. And I have to say, before going into my Bitcoin story, that it looks like you have outdone me in terms of Bitcoin decorations. I really love the Bitcoin artwork that you have in the background right now. All I have is we're in the process of moving, so I have some mattresses and clutter and boxes in this room. But once I'm settled in, I'm gonna make an office with some proper Bitcoin artwork.
I'm gonna blow your mind by telling you that these paintings. Painting is like 1.6 meter tall, okay, this painting there. So that being said, so just a second, this here, yeah, is from actually the team that assists with the channel. This here I got from AliExpress just because it was very cool, moon man on the moon. This here and this here is very cool paintings from Ali. This here is a gift from the audience, and the large painting is a gift from a very talented lady who paints these paintings. She's in Bulgaria. Oh, these two paintings are from UK. Anyway, so my point is that's the other thing. We sell these paintings, yeah? We sell these paintings. They instantly sell. The moment we announce there's a new painting, within 24 hours it goes like that. People just appreciate, they want to be a part of the community, they want to support us. They want the crypto revolution to happen. So yeah, we're very passionate in Bulgaria about crypto.
I love it. I love it. I think the Bitcoin art, the Bitcoin creative scene has a special place in my heart for sure.
Nice. So
yeah, let's see. So my Bitcoin journey, it started when I was living and working in Silicon Valley. So I mentioned that I grew up in the middle of the United States in a small town. I went to university there, but I was always really fascinated with internet technology. And so I sort of knew that I wanted to work in computing and on the internet. But I wasn't sure in what capacity exactly. So early on, I was very interested in information security and sort of hacking, that kind of scene, especially as a teenager and youngster. And so initially, I was trying to start my career in that domain. And so after I finished university, I applied for pretty much every job that I could find in Silicon Valley.
And I'm sorry, I missed. What did you study in university?
Computer science.
It was computer science, and you started instantly applying. And how is it in the States, especially how many years was that? Like 12, 13 years ago? Or
yeah, let's see. So yeah, that was 2004 to 2008. So it was a 4-year program.
14 years ago, yeah. Yep. Yeah, 14 years ago. So how was at the time? Because I mean, like in Bulgaria, I say that even though I'm not 100% confident, but it's kind of like that. We are like 10 to 15 years behind everything. But you know how it is with technology, that some countries that were behind, they leapfrog because, for instance, we never got the checking accounts and stuff like that. And just the other day, I was watching this American TV show, and she was like, "Let me get my checking book." And I'm like, "Are you kidding me? What year is this?" Anyway, so but on many other stuff, we are so many years behind. Like for instance, now in US, we have a bunch of, let's say, Tesla cars. In Bulgaria, it's extremely rare to see a Tesla car.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there are a lot of examples of that around the world, and how regions of Africa really were early to mobile simply because desktop computing never really had the opportunity to penetrate there. I remember when I traveled to Africa 10 years ago, and I was just blown away by how much everyone knew about cell phone technology. You know, I think I kind of went there with this, assumption that I was this techie person and I would have a really good understanding of this kind of stuff relative to most people I would meet. And I probably knew the least about how cell phones work of just about everyone that I encountered over there. So it is a funny phenomenon how that works. Yeah, let's see, Bitcoin. So I had a computer science background. I really wanted to work in Silicon Valley. I kind of viewed that as where a lot of the innovation was happening in these big companies like Google and Facebook. I really wanted to be a part of. And so I applied for just about every internship that I could find. And I ended up starting my career as an engineer at eBay. So I worked at eBay for about 4 years. And that was 2008 to 2012 or so. And then around the end of my time at eBay is when I started to hear the word Bitcoin. I left eBay to join a startup company. So I worked in the cloud computing space, kind of focused on internet infrastructure. So not exactly software engineering, but a lot more of Linux and networking and systems administration and routing, and the domain that has now become kind of SRE and DevOps, if some of the listeners are familiar with those terms. So that was the focus of most of my web tech career, I would say. And then around 2012, a close friend of mine who I considered brilliant, he just would not stop talking about Bitcoin. And I ignored it the first few times. I think Bitcoin was about $3 a coin when he was very excited about it. And I kind of shrugged it off. I was very busy with my day job, and so I convinced myself that I didn't have time for it. And fast forward about a year later, and it was late 2013, and he was still talking about it. He was still very excited about it. And I also noticed a few more people in my day-to-day career in San Francisco were interested in it, a lot of engineering types. And so I found meetup groups around San Francisco, and I started going to these. And I think that was a big transition phase for me when I started to meet people in person who were also interested in this and hear them talk about it. that was, I think I got lucky in some of the people and the information that I was exposed to that way, because when I was searching around on the internet, it was very difficult to find educational content about Bitcoin at the time. All of it was, it was kind of scattered, and it was tough to figure out what was reliable information and what wasn't. But I was also kind of primed, I think, to appreciate Bitcoin in some ways. So my professional background was internet technology, and that's what got me curious, right? I thought, like, what is this new tech thing? But on the side, I was also very much a libertarian, and I was kind of frustrated by a lot of what I saw happening in the world in terms of big government overreach and examples that I felt were, like governments taking a lot of freedoms away from people and doing a lot of damage in the world. And the wars in the Middle East were an example of that for me, with the US involvement there, and a lot of the footage that WikiLeaks exposed of kind of, what was happening in those regions. That just really hit me hard at the time. And I remember thinking, like, why do these horrible things happen in the world? And like, how do we stop it? Is there a way to stop it? How am I contributing to it? And that sent me down this really interesting philosophical rabbit hole of learning. And it was inspired a lot by a US politician and presidential candidate named Ron Paul. So around 2008, he ran for president, and he opened my eyes to economics, and I think especially types of economics that are.
I was gonna say Ron Paul was in the Bitcoin 2021 conference, wasn't he, in Miami?
He was, yes. That was huge, I think, to have him. He definitely helped me, I think, kind of prepared me to appreciate certain aspects of Bitcoin that would not have been obvious to me otherwise. And so I was like reading books written by Ayn Rand. She's my favorite author, and Ron Paul. And then Ron Paul got me interested in other economists, like Austrian economists such as Mises and Rothbard and Hayek. And I was particularly intrigued by that because I had friends who had studied economics, like had bachelor's degrees in economics. And so when I first heard about some of the stuff that these economists were discussing, the Austrians, I went to those friends of mine and said, hey, like, what is this Austrian economics thing? Can you help explain it or put some context around it for me? And none of them had ever heard of it. And so I thought that was strange. I just thought, like, well, you have a degree, like you went through academia, focused on economics, and you don't even know that this school of economics exists. So why is that? And that just got me curious and made me want to learn even more. And I really came to respect the work of the Austrian economists, which typically espouses more of a free market approach to economics. So it's a lot less oriented around central planning and central banks with control over the money supply and over prices, and a lot more centered around laissez-faire economics. So free markets and price discovery and the importance of price in a free market as an information signal. That resonated with me on many levels. And so I just started to dive even deeper. And I feel fortunate because then when I discovered Bitcoin from the tech side, I quickly discovered, oh, hey, actually, a lot of this Austrian economic stuff that I'm interested in, and this freedom and libertarian philosophy that I'm interested in, the notion of taking money out of the hands of the government and how that might change the world, that's actually a big part of this too. And so in those two ways, I think I was kind of prepared to appreciate Bitcoin or notice certain aspects of it that I would not have been otherwise. And so then around 2013, I dove in completely, started learning more, going to as many meetups as I could find, joining Twitter and talking about Bitcoin, trying to learn from other people about Bitcoin. And then, still to this day, it's such a big multifaceted topic that I still feel, 9 years later, like I am still learning more about Bitcoin and its potential to change the world.
Amazing. Just listening to you, it was like, your personal Bitcoin story, and it's just, people can find so many similarities and so many differences in the Bitcoin stories of different people. And you mentioning the in-person Bitcoin meetups, I haven't been on one until I organized it a year ago or something, right?
Good for you for organizing it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, we're having a 400 people event in a month called Crypto Revolution, and 350 tickets are already sold. We got this very massive event room, with cafe pauses, with the lunch there, meaning it's a 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. event. Everything's, like organized to happen there. We have 8 lectures being presented by different names in the crypto world in Bulgaria. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be really, really, really nice. Anyway, so my point was about the meetups. Yeah, you said how obscure it was and how hard it was to find good information, especially having in mind how traditional media, which is present, it's there, right? Any topic you Google, you're gonna find that article from CNBC or something else. In Bulgaria, it's even worse, I would say. And where someone who has no idea what he's talking about have already written an article on a topic from his personal perspective without actually deep diving. So of course, it was Bitcoin's gonna boil the oceans. Bitcoin's gonna use all the energy in the world in 10 years if it continues to exist. Bitcoin is used by dark money and stuff like that. It's just crazy. And I was just saying how my personal education, so I was thinking how you're one generation before me, one era, whatever you call them, 2030 and 2017. Now we have people 2020, 2021, and obviously people from even before that. And I'm thinking how when I started, the place I personally went was Reddit, and from there Andreas Antompoulos. He was the guy for me. I literally haven't watched any other videos, just videos, just Andreas. And he never talks about the price. He always talks about the technology. He always talks about how, let's say, you write a blog and let's say you want to monetize it. Either you have to let these big giant tech monopolies track your users and display ads there, or you could have a 1 cent payment for someone to read your article. But with the current financial system, that cannot happen because of the fees, because of the legacy, the framework that's in place, and people are too, what's the word, like grabbed it and don't want to let go. And he just explains how, thanks to Bitcoin, thanks to Lightning Network, we could have a much better future. And not only that, he explains how with smart contracts and with just addresses, you don't need to be a person. It's gonna be like you're rich buying milk from that store just because your smart fridge notes that you're low on milk or whatever, and so on. And when he pictured that word to me, I was like, this makes so much sense. Like, this to me sounds like the future. So this is why I got into Bitcoin. I wasn't like, oh my God, Bitcoin one day you see it to be like $50,000. Like, no, it's not about that. It's just a better system that makes so much sense. And at the same time, inflation, just want to super quickly say a personal story about inflation. So in the 1996, Bulgaria goes over through hyperinflation. And what happens is all of the savings of people gets wiped out. So my grandfather worked as a painter, but when I say a painter, I don't mean a painter who paints. I mean literally a guy who paints your fence or something, like that type of painter. I don't know how it's called, like a handyman, literally a handyman. But apparently in Bulgaria, like 40 years ago, it's a very well paid job. Like, I don't get it. Like, how hard can it be to paint? But anyway, apparently back then it was very hard. Anyway, so he was a painter, like painting like that. And he was making crazy buck, okay? And so he saved enough, let's say, for half an apartment or something in the city, okay? And he puts it in the bank, in the national bank or whatever, when I'm like 4 or 5 years old. With the idea, by the time I turn 18, like it should be at least enough for a full apartment, right? And 18 comes, I'm 18, no one calls me about that money, my grandfather forgets or whatever, or maybe he didn't forget, he just knew what happened to the money. And I'm like 30 something, and the bank calls me and tells me you have a bank account with me. And I'm like, you're crazy, I don't have a bank account with you. I'm banking with another bank and I haven't been a customer to another Bulgarian bank. And they're like, no, you have a bank account. And I'm like, okay, when did they open it? And they're like, 1996. I'm like, I was 5 years old at the time, like 1994. I couldn't have opened a bank account. And they were like, someone else did. And I asked my father, and he explains to me, it must be your grandfather. Anyway, long story short, he put enough money for half of what? 8 years later, it's enough money for me to almost be able to afford a dinner.
Wow. Wow,
After
yeah, I think
all the interest rate in almost 30 years, that's what I got.
That is a pretty powerful example of fiat money as a savings technology. And it's not a good savings technology. And I think stories like that, you know, they're tragic, obviously, for the individuals affected. But I think oftentimes that is why some people who have experienced that firsthand or even secondhand can appreciate some aspects of Bitcoin that maybe people in the US dollar-based system all of their lives can't. You know, if you're used to your local fiat currency being relatively stable in purchasing power, then the risks of hyperinflation or even just extreme inflation over a decade are not obvious.
Yeah, I was gonna say he had that money, right? Half of what? Doesn't matter what's the amount of money and where you live. Half of what's half of what, right? I don't know. I would guess it's enough money to just go on vacation, depending if you're in a poor country or rich country. Either it's a travel around the world, either it's a travel in your continent, but it's a chow. It's a half, real estate. And he didn't spend that money. He purposely decided, to delay gratification. Not only that, to not get the gratification, but let for his grandchild to get it, to give me a good start in life. I got robbed. He got robbed. Who paid the price? No one. Who took the responsibility? No one. We're literally scammed. That's what happened.
Yep. Yeah, the central bankers are able to quietly steal wealth from individuals holding the currency. And it's not well understood, but I suspect that technologies like Bitcoin that help us finally have an exit from that, finally be able to have an alternative and opt out of that system, are going to very quickly teach the world the power of that. I think one thing, you mentioned Andreas Antonopoulos too, and I feel very grateful to him. He was formative in my Bitcoin journey. Actually, those meetups that I mentioned were run by Andreas. Andreas and Roger Ver actually were the people who started that meetup group. They held events in San Jose, California and Sunnyvale, California. And so I would go there and see Andreas talk and get to chat with him afterwards. And yeah, he was very articulate and very philosophical. And so I think I owe him a lot. I was also, it's funny because I think philosophically, a lot of what Roger Ver talked about early on with Bitcoin's potential to be a check on the power of government and on the power of the nation state, and maybe even reduce the potential for large-scale war, that really resonated with me. I think that was powerful in getting me more excited about this. And, it's kind of ironic because since then, Roger Ver has kind of gone a different route, and he's no longer too much of a Bitcoiner. He's more into the other cryptocurrencies. But early on, that was very helpful for me. And still to this day, I think that's why that's the single biggest reason that I'm so passionate about this technology, is the potential for just world peace implications, where it's not going to be a utopia. Humans are still going to be humans, but I think a lot of the bad stuff that happens in the world today is really the result of people not having control over their money. If we actually if we could feel the money being taken from us when governments issue treasury bonds and monetize the debt and debase the purchasing power, I think a lot of that system is just engineered to not be understood by the general public. Because if the public understood all of the mechanics of what was going on there, that they're holding dollars in savings accounts and checking accounts, or maybe even treasury bonds, and even though the amount of dollars stays the same, the amount of the currency unit stays the same, their purchasing power is going down. Their purchasing power is being taken from them by whoever controls the supply of money. And so it's a form of taxation, but it's not usually talked about by leaders and regulators as taxation, because in my opinion, I don't think they want us to understand it. If we could really feel how much was being taken from us to go and, maybe fight wars that we wouldn't otherwise pay $60,000 per household to go fund, I don't think they'd be able to do as much stuff in the world. I think they would have to. I think the world would change in powerful ways if governments actually had to ask people for their money again. And so that's why I'm excited about Bitcoin. It makes them ask. They can't just quietly steal from everyone.
The thing is, with printing of money, without the consent of the population, you literally just get percent of everyone's money. That's what's happening, right? Because you increase the money supply, you had 0%, now you have 10%, and that's it. You have 10% of everyone's time, and you can spend it. Just now, so firstly, again, I'm in crypto since 2017, and now it's 2022. It's 5 years later, and I'm still spending enormous amount of time educating myself and continue watching other people's podcasts. Like one of the recent podcasts that I've watched was Robert Breedlove, What is Money Show, with, I cannot pronounce that name, Pierre something from Canada, the MP, member of parliament, who now is a candidate for prime minister. Anyway, so my point is that I love that guy. I didn't know who he is. I didn't know because Greg Foss, apparently they're friends and he've been orange pilling him and so on. But I know him from my perspective as the guy in the Canadian parliament. At the time I didn't even know that's from Canada. I thought it's in the UK, but anyway, or something. But he was asking the right questions. He was saying like literally attacking the finance minister and so on, and talking about central banking. He was asking the right questions. I was like, that's one of our guys. Like, it doesn't matter that he's not into Bitcoin. It's about the fact that he just puts the correct questions on the table. I wanna super quickly just show you this, because you mentioned Roger Ver, and can you see my screen? So this here is so firstly, this here is my channel, and I searched here for Roger Ver, and I have here a few videos about Roger Ver, apparently, like this one. It's from a document movie. Document movie. Yeah, no, here, just a second, where was the, so here it's like Roger Ver sells his Lambo to buy more Bitcoin, not the other way around, right? Just because a lot of people are saying like, oh, I'm buying Bitcoin to buy a Lambo. And I'm like, it's not about that. Anyway, so my point is like a document movie called The Bitcoin Gospel, V-Pro documentary 2015, right? So this is one of the document movies that really got me into Bitcoin. And Roger Ver, because you mentioned him, anyway, that's it. So I just wanted to show you this documentary movie if you've watched it. But anyway, so my point is that there is a scene where Roger Ver talks about governments, and he says how the US government nuked, I don't know, like some city or something, and the casualties were enormous. Like thousands of people died, which were not the target. And the lady that presents the news says, yeah, it was a difficult decision and we made it. And they literally, in order to kill, I don't know how many people, like 10 people or 30 people, but it wasn't hundreds or thousands, or maybe just to kill the one very important person, they'll hit thousands of casualties, out of which X amount of children. And literally, he gets really emotional, cries spit out of his mouth, and he says that's unacceptable, and that's the world we live in, and you can't do anything about it because they have all the power. But Bitcoin takes all the power back to you. And my point is that back then, when I was watching Roger, he was one of the people who really, I was like, wow, this guy firstly speaks things that make sense to me, and secondly, seeing him like that, either he's the best actor in the world, Oscar to him, either he really means what he says. Anyway, so tell me your personal take on Roger Ver. What happened there? Like, why did he sign with in 2017 with the I was there? Okay, I was there, Gandalf, 3,000 years ago. So when the block wars occurred and when it was Bitcoin Cash versus Bitcoin, increasing the block size or no. And so what happened with Roger Ver in your opinion? Where did he start and where did he diverge and so on?
Sure, yeah. In my opinion, I do think he's genuine. I think that he means well, and I think he wants to see the future change in ways that that I support and that I agree with. I think he wants more freedom, less tyranny, more accountability for governments, fewer tragedies with no one held accountable. But in my view, I think that he and I just have different understandings of the best way to get to that type of future. So when I started learning about Bitcoin, a lot of the material that I consumed was, Roger's sort of talks and posts on Reddit and Twitter. And he really emphasized payment fees. I think I got the impression that he was going around to merchants locally, wherever he was, and he travels a lot, and he would just try to get them to take Bitcoin. I remember I would go to these restaurants, like there was a Korean barbecue restaurant around California that accepted Bitcoin, and it was just because Roger Ver went in there very passionately and told them that they need to accept Bitcoin, which is great. However, I think a lot of what he emphasized in the pitch to these merchants globally was
cheap transactions.
Fees.
Yeah.
Yes. So I think that he did not quite foresee the evolution of Bitcoin in kind of a technology stack with layers to it. I think in his view, low fees or even zero fee payments were critical so that everybody could cut these payment processors like MasterCard and Visa out of the loop, and just enable this free peer-to-peer kind of transacting. And as much as I would love for that to somehow be true, I just think that the reality ended up that Bitcoin, the data structure of a blockchain and the way that Bitcoin settles payments at its base layer, on chain, is not well suited for that type of commerce. It's not a low latency, fast payment type of system that is necessarily going to have low fees forever. The fees were low when he started because, it was super early. You could put kind of whatever you wanted on the blockchain and miners would just mine it because there wasn't much demand for that scarce block space. But in order to keep the network secure and in order to ensure that it's decentralized, that it's not too prohibitive in cost to be able to run a Bitcoin node in your own software and be completely self-sovereign, I think the block size staying small is very important in that. And so I kind of see it as, I assume that Roger went around and made this pitch to a lot of business owners and then felt some perhaps embarrassment or shame as transaction fees rose, and all of those merchants, he guided them to this world of Bitcoin. And so they were probably looking at him what's the deal? Why did you do this? You said this was going to be cheap fees all the time. And so I think his heart being in a place where he really wants to help those people, he probably just tried to, support Bitcoin Cash and these low fee alternatives in order to accommodate them. But in reality, the scaling solution that I think, really won in the block size wars, and that I support, is Bitcoin's base layer is for slow settlements, large transfers of wealth, where you're okay with waiting hours if need be for multiple confirmations. And then any low latency activity like buying a coffee or buying lunch, or even sending fractions of a penny instantly for online APIs or web activity, all of those micropayment use cases, all of that can happen at higher layers if you think of it as a protocol stack. And Lightning is a prominent example there of a second layer solution on Bitcoin.
So you don't think that it was a selfish, monetary or greedy reasons that he was just trying to, like, he got paid off of the miners or whatever, or something like that? Like that, it was literally just him pivoting that direction just because he was trying to deliver on a promise.
Yeah, it's impossible to know. I mean, I'm not close to him. I've talked to him a handful of times, so it's impossible to know where someone's heart is. I think his heart was in a good place, but he just did not anticipate certain ways that this would play out. Yeah. And so he was scrambling to do the right thing there. But who knows? Maybe behind the scenes, he was making arrangements with miners and like making money hand over fist on having people buy these forks. Don't know.
Yeah. All right. Earlier, when you started with your introduction, I took a few notes. I'm looking at my second screen because I was taking them there, and this is why I got distracted. And I asked you again, like, what did you study? That you studied computer science. So one of the things that made me impression, this is why I thought of Roger Ver and the attacks there and so on, was because you mentioned WikiLeaks and. Just like a small detour of the main topic of today, Bitcoin. I'm gonna say conspiracy theories / WikiLeaks. That's my note. And then I added on the bottom, Germany and Canada, because I'm covering the news. During my shows, Germany and Canada were tracking people using their green passports where they entered, like which shopping mall, which bar, and so on. I can't remember which was it Germany or Canada, but the two countries, one tracked by your passport, literally where you went, so they could create a map and then can ask you to quarantine because in that shopping mall that you entered in that day, that person got sick and so on. And the other thing is, I think that was in Canada, where they tracked people using their cell phones without asking them for permission. They just took the data from the operators, and then later on, I forgot for what reason, they were forced to reveal that they've done that. I don't know. Comments? What does this bring to your mind?
Yeah, I think the last 2 years have been very revealing in terms of some of the potential for overreach by governments and even by big corporations, and really some of the ways that the lines have blurred between those two. Some big corporations almost becoming an extension of the state. Google and Facebook are large enough that the government can effectively exert influence over them. And if they tell them to quietly hand over a bunch of data, then odds are they're going to quietly hand over a bunch of data. And so it's concerning, certainly, because the potential for mass surveillance, which leads to just more of this dark dystopian future in which all of our activity is tracked, all of our activity is surveilled. If we behave in any way that the government does not like, then they can seize our funds. They can lower our social credit score, and this system is already in place in certain regions of China. If your friends behave in ways that they don't like, then you can lose, let's say, points for being friends with them. So they can create these insidious incentives for, not only to kind of steal the wealth and power of people who don't comply, but also for people to ostracize those people. You don't want the government to know that you're friends with someone if that person is a target and is doing bad things. So maybe you cut them out of your life. And it sounds like the stuff out of the TV show Black Mirror. I don't know if you're familiar with that one.
I know.
Yeah. I think it's concerning how more realistic that type of future becomes all the time. And frankly, if it were not for Bitcoin, I would have a difficult time seeing the potential for a better future, because tech and those big centralized giants that exert all of this control over everyone, they just keep growing larger and larger, right? And prior to Bitcoin, I didn't really see a way to fight back or a way to change course. And I I think the decentralization and kind of restoring power to the people from big government and from even big corporations, that's what gets me excited. And so, I think the future is actually fairly binary. I think it's one of two futures. There's, on one end, there is this dark dystopian future, which is a CBDC based future, a central bank digital currency future. Most fiat currency is already digital, right? But in a CBDC world, it's 100% digitized. And maybe the central banks are even dealing directly with average individuals, with retail individuals, controlling their accounts. And in that world, you need permission from them to do anything. You have to comply with whatever they want. Otherwise, they can trivially steal your wealth, which is effectively stealing your time, which is effectively stealing your life. And so I think a future based on a central bank digital currency is a future of slavery. It's a future of a smaller group of people having more control over everyone in the world than we've ever experienced before. And the only real hope I see of something other than that is a future based on Bitcoin. A future based on a money of freedom that does not have its supply or access to accounts controlled by these large actors, these, say central bankers. Bitcoin's permissionless. No one can change the supply and no one can stop anyone from running the software, from creating an account and from spending or from receiving. And that I think gives a lot of hope to me. And so, yes, you can use Bitcoin as an investment. You can use it to make more dollars, and you don't have to care about all of this philosophy. But I think that philosophy is there for whoever wants it and whoever is interested in it. And what that represents and the kind of energy that you get from people when they see that hope is powerful. So that's a big part of it for me.
Listen, I've taken so many notes. So firstly, when you what was it called? The Freedom Trucks or something like that, the convoy in Canada, right? Yeah. And the GoFundMe page, where the Canadians donated $9 million. And what happened? The government told the GoFundMe, which is a company, freeze the account. They froze it, and after that, instead of even giving back the money, they said, oh, we're going to give it to a third-party charity. Then after backwash, they said, okay, we're going to give you back the money, because if you give back the money to the donators, they do have the chance to use Bitcoin to redonate, right? And later, I kid you not, just yesterday, because my shows are Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I was talking exactly about that, how Bulgaria was under slavery for 500 years, between 1300s and 1800s. And during the 1800s, we had, I don't know how it's called in English, but, these freedom fighters, I think freedom fighters, people going in the mountains, the villages support them. They're trying to organize, what's the word in English? Like a fight against the oppression and so on. But this is 1800s, right? This is not now, meaning they're like super old guns, still fighting with swords and stuff like that, like we're talking those days. Anyway, my point is, from the perspective of the oppressors, they're terrorists. That's what they are, right? Even if they say, we don't share your religion, we don't share your language, this land was ours for, thousands of years, and you come here and take over us with your military power, we're going to fight back, even 500 years later. And my point is that from those people's perspective, they were terrorists. And again, I mean, a bit exaggerated, but from the government of Canada's perspective, the Turkers are terrorists or something, right? Because they said to the GoFundMe, there was violence and so on. Like, I don't know, I haven't seen violence. I'm not living there, but I'm just saying, from what I've seen, I literally saw ladies just going there and giving away sausages and bread to the truckers so they can have something to eat. Anyway, so my point is that, Bitcoin just gives you freedom to fight back, gives you the freedom for the people to decide what to do, instead of whoever has the power to decide what to happen. And that's it. Just the permissionless part that you said is just so crucial. And I know that a lot of people are gonna say, oh yeah, but this way terrorists could use it and so on. Yeah, terrorists use cell phones. Let's trash cell phones and not use cell phones because they're gonna speak faster this way. Or let's abandon and forbid to use cars because terrorists cannot drive, go from point A to point B with cars faster. So it's a stupid idea to block technology or ban technology just because a bad actor could use it as well.
I agree completely. And that Canadian sort of incident with the truckers convoy and GoFundMe, I think was important to me on two levels. One level, you highlighted around, it's like one of the best advertisements for Bitcoin that we could ask for in a way. It's sad that it happened. I wish it hadn't happened because I want that those people to get their money and for their donations to go to the right place. But I think it just showed people the type of control that these organizations like GoFundMe, which are influenced by regulators, have over finance. And so in the same way that donations to WikiLeaks many years ago got some attention on Bitcoin, I think this was a wake-up call to many people about the power of censorship-resistant money like Bitcoin. And then the other level that I think is important to me is just that I love seeing people be reminded of how important like truckers, like the working class, are to a society. I think there's so much reverence sometimes for academics and journalists and those fields are, there are some brilliant people doing brilliant work in those fields, of course, but I think sometimes we lose sight of how important so much of society is for helping us all live comfortable lives. And when truckers, who are kind of the lifeblood of the economy, like farmers and truckers, they're important. And I think seeing them go on strike kind of as a reminder to people of how important they are. Like, this food doesn't show up on your table for free. People have to work hard to make this happen, and they have to be masters of their craft. And I think sometimes those types of jobs, that type of work is not appreciated to the extent that it should be. And so I love seeing these types of reminders to people about that.
I told you that I started the channel in order to literally educate people that yes, there are pyramid schemes that are using the crypto name, the crypto word in their name, but they're pyramid schemes. That's all they are. The same way in Bulgaria, again, because we are 20 years behind, we still have phone scams, I don't know if they're present in the States anyway, and they're still, if they exist, they're still making money. So apparently people, they're still getting on them. Just the freaking send me 2 Bitcoin, I'll send you back 5 Bitcoin. Like, what the hell? Anyway, so anyway, so my point is that I started channel because that, yada. And my point is that now my mission literally is get to the whole country, let them know that there is a crypto community in Bulgaria. And yeah, they've heard about Bitcoin. Oh yeah, that drug money. But think about it. Are there really that many people that use drugs in Bulgaria? Is this what's happening? Or maybe there is something else, Maybe it's not a pyramid scheme. Maybe it's something else. So it's literally just that wake-up call of, firstly, maybe Bitcoin is not a bad word. Secondly, what exactly is it? Do you know? I really like when someone trash talks Bitcoin to ask him, what's the difference between proof of work and proof of stake? What do you think is, let's say, the long-term risks with proof of stake or proof of work? Or let's say, how do you do a 51% attack on Bitcoin? They have no idea, because they have no idea. But they still trash talking Bitcoin, right? So I really love uneducated people when they trash talk Bitcoin. And literally just recently one guy said, oh, it's just like gambling. I'm like, what? Anyway, so my mission at the moment is literally to get to as many people as I can, just to make them think about why Bitcoin exists, because when Satoshi Nakamoto created it, he wasn't like, oh man, I'm gonna make this digital money, I'm gonna mine them so for cheap, and then I'm gonna be selling them $10,000 a pop. Can you imagine Satoshi Nakamoto thinking that? Like, no, he saw a problem, and he took the things, matters in his own hands, and he created the solution, he gave it to the world, he open sourced it, he disappeared because he knew what an attack vector he's gonna be on the network if someone finds out who he is. And I even created a TikTok. I kid you not, I have a TikTok, and I'm using faith in humanity because of all the I don't know, content that it's not my type that I see there whenever I by mistake click on the home button and some random content pops up. But I created even TikTok where this is a 2-hour podcast. My streams during the week is a 2 hours streams, This is the content I like, where I can deep dive, where I can express myself. And then on TikTok you have 60 seconds or less, and I'm like, oh my god, how do I do this? But I still try, with a bunch of editing, a bunch of, getting it as quickly as possible to send my message. I pick up some news that is very important or something, and I cover it very quickly. And again, the reason I do it is just to get to audience that is not on YouTube, that is not on our usual channels and somewhere else, and again, get the same message across. Why does this exist? And maybe there is some problems that there is literally no other way to solve it. In Bulgaria, we are like not people that haven't went to protests. Just last year, we have 2-3 massive protests. When I say massive, I mean like the largest boulevards in the Sofia, in the capital, filled up with people. And I don't know, like just 10 years, past 10 years, I'm sure that we had at least 30-40 massive protests with like hundreds of thousands of people. I kid you not a single one of them got through to what they wanted. Usually they're against the government, like, oh, we want this party down. It doesn't go down, like they don't give up. Or let's say they're like, okay, we're gonna do an emergency house code, a new election, right? And they still win. How is this possible? How can the majority of people not want them and they still win? And in my opinion, it's just corruption, a bunch of corruption. They're just buying votes and whatnot. There is literally like whenever there is election from neighboring countries, there's like massive influx of people. But majority of them, I don't want to speak about which countries and so on, so I don't politicize the show. But my point is that I'm sure that there are just certain parties buying the votes and so on, where they have like, I don't know, like 10-30,000 people living there, 10-30,000 people living there. And anyway, so I start talking about corruption just because to me, we talked about inflation, but that's the other thing that I personally feel robbed from is the corruption within the government. Firstly, in English, it's called, I really love the word in English, it's called public servant. You're a servant. You're not a public boss. You're not a public god. You're a public servant, right? And in Bulgaria, if you work for the government, I work for the government. Do you know who I am? I'm paying your salary. Literally, I'm paying your salary. Do you understand that I go to the freaking fields and I dig potatoes from there so you can eat? Like, do you understand that? And still, the people from the government look at me and say like, I'm from this party. Do I know who I am? Who are you? Like, you're nobody. I'm paying your salary to do work for me. I'm your boss. You're my employee. That's the relationship here. But I don't know what's good democracy, and that's not the reality anymore. They're the people in power. Literally, you're supposed to be afraid from the government. I'm a slave. At the moment where I'm afraid from the person that I'm paying his, salary, I'm a slave. That's what happened.
Yeah, I think it's unfortunate, and I think you're right that the power of the state has become too great, and I think the spirit behind public service, which was often behind the founding of countries or the founding of certain systems and governance structures, has just really been lost over time and forgotten. And I think if you connect enough dots, you can trace it back in so many cases to the money, to easy money. And there's that term called the Cantion Effect that I'm sure you've heard before. It's after a French economist, Richard Cantion, who described the ability to inflate a money supply. If you can print more fiat money, or you can create more gold or silver, anything that's used as money, then when you bring those new units into circulation, you're the first one to be able to spend it. And so the market has not had time to realize that that additional supply exists. So if you take it as like an extreme example, let's say that you had a magic money printer in your office at home and it would just spit out as many dollars as you want. You could walk around spending billions of dollars everywhere day to day. If you did that enough, then over time, prices rise because there are more dollars in circulation. But you get the opportunity to buy things cheap because you're buying your luxury boats and your Lambos and your castles and, you know, everything before the market has realized that these are newly created units of the money. And so that the effects of that and the incentives that that creates, if you are the central bankers, if you're the Federal Reserve or the European Central Bank, and you can bring new money into existence and spend it yourself or give it to your friends, your corporate associates, so that they can, you know, bail themselves out or enact whatever programs they think are important, then that is an unfair benefit. That you are cheating the system because you are effectively siphoning away wealth from people who are trying to save money when you do that. And we can argue all day about whether any particular reason why they choose to do that is good or bad. Maybe this company deserves to be bailed out, maybe this one doesn't. In my opinion, at the end of the day, it's theft regardless, because the real decision shouldn't be in the hands of those central planners, the small group of people who get to distribute these funds. It should be a conversation with all the individuals out there who are trying to save money. They're working hard and they're just trying to protect what they've earned. And so I think a really cool way to view Bitcoin is as a defensive technology. For the first time since, you know, we've been alive, the first time really in the history of humanity, an individual can protect themselves and can protect their property, their wealth, against even an actor as powerful as a nation state. That's never been true before. You know, it was more true when precious metals like gold and silver were money, compared to the fiat paper currency that we've known for the last 100+ years. But even then, with gold and silver, it was very vulnerable to physical violence and even pillage. They could go and they could bomb a city and then come in and take all the precious metals away. Or they could throw someone in jail and they could go into their home and, you know, take all of the valuables. And so the return on investment for physical violence was fairly high with those types of bearer assets. And I think Bitcoin changes the world and is going to change how society is structured by lowering the return on investment for violence now, because it's increased the power of defense. If you have created value in the world and you want to protect that from anyone else, especially nations, then suddenly there is a way that you can. And yeah, maybe they can do all kinds of horrible things to you, but ultimately, as long as your Bitcoin are secured well, then they can't just, with the stroke of a pen, steal what you've worked hard for anymore. And even if they go to extreme lengths to imprison you or torture you or all kinds of like horrible things, hopefully that would never happen. But even in those cases, that's much more expensive for them to do than to just seize dollars from bank accounts at large scale digitally all the time. And so I think that cost difference, that is what is going to profoundly change the future.
The third richest man in Mexico, whatever his name was, some big Bitcoiner. You know him, yeah? When I say the third richest man in Mexico, anyway.
Yes.
He's famous by that title, and then whatever his name was.
Either,
but he has some chains of stores or something like that. Anyway, just recently there was a quote of his. I don't know if it's recent or old. Anyway, just the tweet recently popped up, and he said, that the most important quality of Bitcoin is the fact that it's unseizable, and I started the whole topic about TikTok because I remembered a comment just recently, like it was today. So in Bulgaria, in a small town in the center of the country, an older capital of the country called Veliko Tarnovo. So there, a small corner shop, they started accepting Bitcoin with wallet of Satoshi through the Lightning Network, right? So they're like, you come, let's say, I don't know, you buy a bottle of Coke and it's let's say 368, and they type it in. The thing is also, I haven't looked into the settings of the wallet apparently enough, because usually when I just send Satoshis and I look like, oh, I need to send $10 and just try 10,000 Satoshis. Is it too much? Is it too little? And then I change it, right? Until I kind of get it. So apparently they changed so you can put exactly how much leva, and then it checks, the price. Leva is our currency. You can it checks the price, and it makes an invoice for that many Satoshis. Anyway, my point is that they put it to national television, yada, yada, yada. I covered it on my shows, and one guy in TikTok commented like, yeah, big deal. We could have done the same thing with Revolut. And a person who helps with managing the TikTok, he asked like, what should I reply? And I was thinking, I'm like, yeah, you can do the same thing with Revolut. But the thing is, the difference is like with Revolut, just with your bank account, it can be seized, it can be frozen. And the idea of Bitcoin is like, no one can touch your Bitcoin, no government can do it. Except the situations we just discussed with you, you said where it's gonna cost them a lot more to seize your, let's say, I don't know, like $200 of Bitcoin compared to with your Revolut account or with your Bitcoin account. So yeah, that's it. Just being sovereign, just being independent, and the other thing is now with we globalize so many things, right? Meaning like now. This thing is built, I don't know, like maybe it's mined in Africa and then it's being shipped to China, then they do something with it, and then it's being assembled in Germany, and then it's being sold off in the States or something. And my point is that we globalize so much. We globalize the language, right? Like me and you speak the same language, even though I had to learn it when I was like 15 years old or whatever. And through the internet, we make this instant connection. I think there is a small delay, like 200 milliseconds or something, but it's still fast enough for us to be able to speak and understand each other clearly. And we globalize so many things, but do you know what we haven't globalized? We haven't globalized the government, meaning that to this day, and especially in the States, it's even worse. Oh my gosh. In the States, even if you go to another country, from what I understand, you still have to pay taxes to the government of the States on property appreciation or Bitcoins being sold and so on. And that's the thing, like I can't remember, it was an old tweet that they covered. It was like, in the future, yes, sure, there will be nations, meaning still government, not government, how's it called, country borders and so on, but I'll go where I'm treated best. Where, I don't know, let's say I already have a bunch of money, I just don't want to pay that many taxes, I'm gonna go where it's low taxes. Or let's say I just want to build a family, I'm gonna go where they have the best social program, where 50% of your income is being taken to taxes, but you really see where the taxes actually go after that, or something like that. So the idea is like just now with, like there is this term digital nomad, and now with, the situation with the pandemic, you have so many people working from home, so this is definitely happening for employers starting to get used for people not to be in the office and to be able to micromanage them and constantly look at them, what they're doing and so on. Anyway, and my point is like, I feel like that's the next step. I'm thinking like me as a person, I'm constantly saying like how money, time, energy are all the same word to me. And me as a person, I'm a capital of my own, meaning I have knowledge, right? I can do a lot of stuff. I can manage a company. I can program stuff for you. I can a bit design, just a bit. I'm not the best designer, but I can design, okay, if need be. I can make you a leaflet or something. So my point is, I have so much capital in my brain, right? I can do so many useful things to other people. I can be a driver, absolutely. And my point is that this capital, I'm gonna spend it, because I'm spending my time, I'm spending there for my capital, where I'm treated best. And at the moment, literally, I'm just thinking like, where do I want to live? That comes the question. And depending on your situation, again, do you have a bunch of money? Do you are you single? Are you married? Do you have 2 kids? Do you care about let's say the schools? Like, do you want to, let's say, I don't know, go in the Scandinavia, in Sweden, in Finland, in Norway or something? Or do you want to go in Denmark, or do you go to Germany? And now I'm thinking of that Bitcoin family, right? Where for 5 years they haven't stopped traveling the world, and now they're settling down in Portugal.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think that trend is important and encouraging. More things, more work being digital, which frees people from the constraints of geography, at least for their work. Then I think that does eliminate a lot of leverage that the state has over you, you know, and hopefully it will allow people to seek out governments that treat them better, and it'll kind of accelerate this global game theory of incentivizing governments to attract Bitcoiners, entrepreneurs, technologists, and builders, and to everyone's benefit, really. I think the sort of counter trend to that is more restrictions on travel. So the good thing, in my opinion, that came out of all the craziness the last 2 years is that increased mobility, more work going online, less requirement to physically be in an office. I think that's good. That gives more leverage to individuals. I think what's bad and what potentially threatens individuals are restrictions on border crossings. And so a lot of that with, you know, maybe it's for vaccine requirement reasons, whatever the popular reason of the moment is. I do worry that trend will increase, more scrutiny on travelers, because ultimately, big governments exist today. And if all of this plays out in a certain way, then they won't for long. Their power is really threatened by mobility and by digital money like Bitcoin. And so if they try to stop it, then I could see that effort to stop it manifesting as making it harder, not even necessarily to like gain access to a certain country, but harder to leave wherever you're at. The tweet version of it is like that, you know, walls are going to be less about keeping out intruders and more about keeping in taxpayers. And so I think there will be kind of a tug of war happening there with technology, where you'll have these apps and, you know, surveillance apps and requirements to check in and provide your identity, and, you know, technology that allows them to try to lock people down effectively. But then hopefully there will be these other types of technologies, decentralized tech, and things that enable financial privacy and just privacy in terms of where you reside and your physical location, that will provide a counterbalance and enable people to fight back and remain sovereign throughout all of that.
When you said people, walls are going to be more about people being trapped inside than people entering, outsiders entering. I literally thought we are literally a cattle. That's all we are. We are just sheep of the government. They're just trying to, like, you know, like take care of their herd so they don't lose the sheep. It doesn't go somewhere else. So after that, they're going to need us for the slaughterhouse. And after that, I remembered again, Bulgaria was a communist country until 1989. Now it's 2022, so this is just like 30 years, 33 years. It's really not that much, right? I'm turning 33 this year, so literally Bulgaria stopped being a communist country when I was born. And the thing is, then it became a mafia country. That's another topic. You know, Russian mafia came here. Anyway, so completely messed up situation, but now it's a bit better. But my point is that I remember there is this very meme clip of a woman. I don't know what year is it, like maybe it's in the early 90s or something, so it's just after the regime fell off, and she says, so she goes on this political gathering or something. I don't know what it is, what's the context, but it's just the words. She says to the cameraman, shoot at me with the camera, right? She wants to be recorded, and she says like, I'm asking, who is going to give me money? I have 4 kids. I want to send them to school. Who's going to give them money? That's what she says. And I think the situation is just like the change of the regime, where from you relying on the government giving some subsidies because you have children, maybe the subsidies are very large or something, I don't know. Now it's just a free market. Like, you don't have 3 kids unless you have the money to raise 3 kids. It's simple as that, dude. Like, I don't know how to explain it to you. Like, do I have to pay for your kids? I have to be childless so you can have 3 kids? Like, do you imagine this how it's gonna work? Like, it's so, all I'm looking for is just fairness. That's all I'm asking for.
Yeah, I agree. And I think a common criticism of libertarianism and more free markets is feeling like people who advocate for that are selfish, or they are not going to be considerate of others, and there will be all of these less fortunate people out there in tragic circumstances, and they won't have these social safety nets available. And I think those critics often are well-intentioned. They just want to see people live comfortable, healthy, happy lives, but I don't think the right way to solve it is with compulsion and with force and with theft. I think that if there is someone in my community who is in a tragic situation, then maybe I should consider helping them. And maybe, like, individuals who see tragic circumstances can voluntarily choose to try to make that better. And maybe that's starting a nonprofit. Maybe it's just, donation. Maybe it's like giving someone a blanket, whatever it is. It's on you to live your life that way. I want it to be everyone's choice. I don't want anyone to be forced to feed someone else because I think that person is hungry. If I think someone is in need, then I think the most powerful expression of that should be me helping that person myself, and maybe evangelizing it, maybe trying to persuade others to help, but never forcing them to help. And so I'm optimistic that people are mostly good, and that in a free market where people actually have control over their wealth and their savings and their time, I think people would be better taken care of today than in these force-based systems of social safety nets where you don't have an incentive to even care or to think about circumstance on a case-by-case basis.
I just want to say that I'm looking at the chat of the YouTube stream, okay? And Sky's the Limit says, you made a very good impression of the voice of the lady. As in Bulgaria, it's like, Pitam, koi ще ми даде пари? So it's like, I'm asking, who's gonna give me money?
Yeah. Nice, yeah, nailed it.
Exactly. But no, it's just it's normal to have more productive people and less productive people. It's just like, as Jordan Peterson says, who also got orange pilled. I just love how random people that they just have nothing to do with Bitcoin, and then all of them end up into Bitcoin. Just like that Pierre guy from the Canada. Again, I just know him as a sound person, and he most probably is going to become a Bitcoiner. Now Jordan Peterson also is going to become a Bitcoiner. Anyway, he's worried. And my point is that he said in an interview, I think it was that crazy interview. Do you know the crazy interview with that lady, the feminism lady, where he talks about his book and tries to attack him? Do you know?
Oh yes, I saw that. Yes.
It's a 30-minute video. I just open it from time to time just to go to the comment section because it's crazy. It's just like because every single word he says, he attacks him and twists his words. And let's say in the comments something like Jordan Peterson says, there is water in the ocean, and the lady responds, so you think people should be drowning? Is this what you're saying? And stuff like that. Anyway, so he says it's not about people being equal, it's about people having equal opportunity. So you have the equal opportunity, and depends on you what you're going to do with it. So it's about equal opportunity. I think it was from that interview because she says how, do you know that it's 80% of the high management jobs are taken from men and not from women, so therefore women are in bad position. And he says like, no, maybe, just maybe, women, because they give birth and so on, they're feeling so much more attached to their child, also because the time is ticking, and women have to give birth earlier than, let's say, men can have the children even when they're in the 50s. And this is why women take that sacrifice from their career, majority of women. This is why, yes, there is less women in the high management or whatever. Anyway, my point is that opportunity, so it's you have to have equal opportunity, but it's absolutely normal to have different outcomes. And on the topic of, you said, non-profit and people making their choice, let's say to donate or to fix a problem. There is some people that are extremely rich, like let's say, I don't know, like Bill Gates or Elon Musk or Jack Dorsey or whatever, and they cannot spend that money. Literally, it's impossible unless you spend it just to spend it, right? Let's say you go on vacation on Maldives or whatever the most expensive place right now, and you buy the most expensive nights, and you still cannot spend that money. Literally making more money a day than you can spend physically. You have to buy like 100 wambos a day for no good reason whatsoever in order to spend that money, which is ridiculous. And my point is that the way I see it is that everyone works. Some work harder than others. Therefore, some people receive more money than others because they're more creating more value to society than others. That's it. Simple as that. Free market. And then some people, just because of the position they get into, but not because of connections of the government, but just because being proactive, creating a company, having employees, and yada, 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 sooner or later, just the company grows so much. Let's say it's 2,000, let's say it's 8,000 employees. And then all of a sudden, even though you pay everyone's the salaries, you still make like millions a day or something. And the way I see it is that these people, like, they've already proven that they're very, hardworking, proactive, and so on. And maybe, now they can just like not do anything, just like the whole time and just party all day, all night, and their company is still gonna continue working. But these people, they have the power and the choice, if they decide to fix a certain problem. Like the way I look at Elon Musk is literally he's seeing different problems, he decides to fix it, and puts his mind on it and starts working on it. And I remember somewhere in the I remember it was that American guy. I used to like him and then I don't like him anymore. Anyway, that guy with the meme with the gloves like that. Oh, come on, the 60-something years old
I feel like I've seen this meme, but I can't think of
the guy
who it
who
is.
sits like that. Oh my god, type it in the chat, guys. So what was his name? Anyway, so my point is that I like him. Like he made so much sense to me 3, 4, 5 years ago. And then the more I listen to him now, the more Bernie Sanders. So anyway.
That meme.
Yeah. I mean, Bernie Sanders, he sits in the winter with the mittens or whatever they're called, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, so Bernie Sanders. So my point is that he said something like, Elon Musk something like, Elon Musk haven't paid any taxes in the past 1 year while everyone else is paying a bunch of taxes and so on and so on. And I think like he doesn't need to pay taxes, generally speaking. Like he's giving I don't know how many thousands of jobs. All of these people pay you taxes thanks to him creating the company. Like what are you talking about? Literally, indirectly, he's already paying more taxes than you have ever paid in your whole life, and even your generation, like 10 generations down in your past or something. Anyway, and I lost my train of thought, but my point is that taxes, and then Elon Musk says like, I'm gonna sell 10% of my shares or something, and he said like, just give me the word and I'm gonna sell 10 more or whatever. So that's it. Just these people, I feel like they majority of them want to live in a better world. They understand they're not gonna spend this money anyway, and they can just like decide what problem is like closest to their heart and fix it. Some of them, I don't know, maybe they have their mother died of cancer or something, they want to decide to fix that. Let's say some other drunken driver killed his father, let's fix that. Some other could I don't know, like again, a personal story that maybe changed the course of their life, and they're like, that's it, I just want to fix that. Maybe free education, maybe something else. If they really struggled and they couldn't go to university just because of the high fees and all the extra expenses that you have to accumulate for in order to go physically to a university somewhere, especially 10-15 years ago where online education was not really a thing.
Yeah, I would much rather have smart, capable people like Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos allocating capital than the government and whoever is going to get it after they are taxed. If Elon Musk gave all of his net worth, if he donated all of his net worth to the government, they would blow through it in like a week. It would not even make a dent in the national debt. And so I think the importance of allowing people to build things and craft a better future, like the incentives are there in the free market and they're not in the government. If you examine regulatory agencies, their size and their expenses just continue to grow, all-time highs every year, and they get bloated and inflated and more administrative overhead, and it takes longer to deal with them. The level of service that you get from them goes down because they don't really have an incentive to improve. They have a monopoly on it because they're the government, right? They have a monopoly on violence. So what they says goes. So what they say goes. So you can't start a competitor to the DMV, the institution in the US that issues driver's licenses, right? They can provide horrible service, but they can never go bankrupt. So they don't have to worry about being fast, being better, improving quality, because you can't walk across the street to a competing DMV that's going to do better and give them your money instead. And so I think wherever you don't have that incentive to perform, because you don't have that risk of failure, quality just goes down. The incentives just aren't there.
I was gonna say that again, like I'm constantly, I'm in the process of awakening myself, you know, even though I would say I know a bunch of about Bitcoin already, awakened myself on so many different topics and continue doing that, or maybe just like it gets to another level. So that's one of the expressions that we have in Bulgaria, which is like, there is a more secure, there is not a more secure job than a government job. And I think to myself, and I lived with that saying my whole life. And then I'm thinking about that, and I'm like, what are you saying? Why is it like that? Like, how can that be? Like, so you're saying if you have a recession, if everyone's suffering, and literally we're paying for the government people salaries, they never like let people go? What? Like in the companies that I've worked, they sucked me multiple times because, let's say, oh, you know, we have to cut expenses. And now you're telling me that if I work for that's it, I'm guaranteed to have a job for life. That's it. They'll never let me go. How is that possible?
Yeah, I mean, it all comes back to the money, right? And I think when money becomes unlimited, as it effectively is right now, then government power becomes unlimited. And so there's no need to rein in these agencies. You can just they can keep growing, and they can keep taking money from people to fund their growth, whether they're doing a good job or not. And a big realization in my Bitcoin journey was the importance of savings. So I thought a lot about freedom and free markets for quite a while, but I always naively thought that most of the government's power comes from income taxes. And so I thought about money circulating, money being spent, the velocity of money. And I thought, like, okay, how do we actually take power away from the government in a way that they can't stop? Does that mean that a bunch of people would need to like go around and perform tax evasion, like do this illegal stuff where they're like spending peer-to-peer in some circular economy and not reporting it? And, you know, we can kind of argue about the philosophical merits of doing that. It's obviously illegal, but a big realization to me was that most of their power doesn't come from that. We're not going to really put a dent in the state's power by, you know, spending peer-to-peer too much compared to the dent that we're going to put by savings. Most of the state's power comes from demand for dollars and for US Treasury bonds, for government sovereign bonds, just being held. And so really the most powerful way that anyone can fight back against this system, that anyone can take power back, is like the highest ROI on that is just holding Bitcoin, just using it to protect your savings, because that reduces the demand for fiat currencies and it increases the demand for Bitcoin. And their whole house of cards system collapses if too many people do that, because the money that they have access to print is only valuable because people want to hold it. And so I think Bitcoin as a savings technology is not as well understood. That took me a lot longer to see and to appreciate. But I think that is, especially in this early phase of Bitcoin adoption that we're in, where it's, you know, I think today the price of Bitcoin is roughly 43,000 US dollars. Like maybe once we get to 10 million US dollars, then we'll see much more like peer-to-peer economy and spending, because everybody wants to hold by that point, right? It's already got a lot of liquidity and a lot of capital that has flowed into the asset class. But right now, I think the most powerful way to fight the system is to save with Bitcoin.
Taxes, police, fire department, hospitals, and so on. We talked about how there is a bunch of inefficiency. And inefficiency, there is a lot of in these bodies as well. Like, are you confident that the fire department is running in the best possible way and there is no money leaking anywhere and so on? In the police department also, in the hospital, especially in Bulgaria, oh my gosh, like the hospitals are literally, unless you tell how much extra money under the table we're gonna give, like they're like, okay, bye, we don't have a bed for you. And I've been always saying that I would prefer not to pay any taxes. And why shouldn't I have the choice not to pay any taxes, right? I have the, let's say I do have the choice. And then someone robs me. You know, cannot call the police, right? I literally can call the police. I haven't paid the taxes, so the police not gonna come. That's it. And there comes the free market. Next time I'll be like, okay, do you know what? I'm gonna pay my $30 a month to the police, right? So I can call them. And then let's say I get sick, and then okay, that's it. From now on, I'll start paying for that. But my point is that if there is competing entities, then I can hear a good word about that one, and I'm gonna pay exactly to that one to service me. But at the moment, we're paying a bunch of taxes, and literally I feel like we're not getting the best possible service. And on the topic of gray market or whatever it's called, let's say my father tells me, can you come help me fix the house? And I'm like, oh dude, I don't have the time right now, I'm really busy with let's say with university or something. It's like, come on, come, I'll tip you $100. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna come. So I do it for the extra money incentive, right? So should I go to jail now? Like, did I not pay the right amount of taxes, right? Like, okay, so let's say that's fine because it's between family members. Okay. So let's say my neighbor is a plumber and I have a plumbing issue. And I call him, no, dude, like, I know you're a plumber, can you come fix this issue for me? And let's say again, I trust him that he's a competent plumber. And let's say I take the risk that of not signing any contract, right? Therefore not paying any taxes, and I pay him in cash or I pay him in Bitcoin, in peer-to-peer money, and he comes fix the plumbing for me. Let's say there isn't any issue, and I'm happy, he's happy, we haven't paid anything to the government. Why should we pay anything to the government? Like, I haven't needed their service. There is nothing to pay for. If the plumber doesn't do a good job and then I want my money back, it's like, yeah, fuck you, you know? Then I'll learn my lesson. Next time I want the contract, right? So on points, it should be a free market basis. And in my mind, the gray market is the gray market. Like, let people deal with it. Because back in the day when we were freaking savages with stone tools and so on, like, there was no government and we were doing just fine, right? Not just fine, obviously it wasn't as good as it is today, but my point is there is a way, right? There is a way, especially when you have language, when you can communicate, we can negotiate and so on.
Yeah, that's the type of voluntarist, laissez-faire future that I think would be better. I agree. I think it's just been impractical to achieve it for the last 200 years or so because of the sort of the state of technology and the power that technology has given to the nation state. Like, right now, the nation state is the dominant entity in the world, and so it gets to make the rules because it's the one that can use physical violence most effectively. They can throw you in a cage if you get out of line, and they have bombs and tanks and guns and so forth. And so I think it takes a shift in the balance of that power through technology in order to meaningfully change that. And so I don't believe we can ever vote to change the system. They will let us vote on the details, they'll let us change the figurehead, they'll let us change like a policy here and there, maybe dial some knobs, but they're never going to let us vote to meaningfully change the system. If we actually want to change the system, we have to build and adopt new technology that takes power from those institutions and gives it to others. And that's exactly what I see Bitcoin as. I think that's the biggest thing it represents. It's a defensive technology that takes power from the nation state and gives it to the individual.
Okay, earlier you talked about, you did mention China, I think maybe, or I was thinking China when you said CBDC. Yeah, when you say CBDC, I'm thinking China, okay? That's the same word for me, okay? CBDC, yeah, China, I got it, okay. So anyway, my point is that, firstly, in China, and in my opinion, Russia, you cannot have a rich person without him being best friends with Putin or Xi Jinping, or who was the Chinese dictator.
Yeah.
And that's a fact. That's it. Just reason there was this tweet, oh, second richest man in Russia said that or thinks that. Like, yeah, that's because Putin allowed him to. That's why. And the finance minister decided that Bitcoin should be regulated and not banned. Yeah, Putin said that. Putin agreed to that right before he said it. And my point is that in these countries, literally, and especially in China, you're allowed to create wealth within the country and just be rich, but also listen to the government, whatever they tell you, just oblige. That's it. You want to take your wealth outside the country? Yeah, no, that's not gonna happen. Like, you're gonna disappear, but your wealth is not gonna disappear. It's gonna stay within the country. And when you say CBDCs, I've extensively covered them on the channel, that I think that's the end. Literally, that's the end. The moment we all bank with the same bank, the moment the government has access to our money to freeze it, the moment the government can impose different rules for different peoples. Oh, we notice you're not spending much, so we're gonna put negative interest rate on you, so we force you to spend your money, otherwise you're gonna lose it anyway. And some other people that are spending too much, oh, we're gonna give him some interest, so he doesn't constantly run overdraft. That's full control. They got you by the balls. That's it. You just do whatever they say. You're a puppet.
Yeah, and I think that distinction is lost on many people, unfortunately. I think that people aren't able to see the difference many times between decentralized digital money like Bitcoin and centralized digital money like a CBDC. They just see it as, digital money. And when in reality, those two are extremely different and lead to very different futures in societies. And so I agree, a CBDC-based future is one of complete control and tyranny and slavery. And a Bitcoin-based future is the only hope that I see against that, for a future of freedom, where individuals have control over their time and their life. One thing that is less obvious too is that I think a lot of other cryptocurrencies are not really decentralized enough to fight back or to offer any meaningful alternative, let's say, to that. So at the risk of triggering, some people who might be listening and think that other cryptocurrencies are also fighting against the fiat system, I don't really quite see it that way. I think that they are often more centralized than they want people to understand. And even systems like Ethereum, I don't think Ethereum is much different from central banking. I think it's effectively no better than a CBDC. In fact, I think systems like Ethereum might be worse than a CBDC, because a central bank digital currency is very obviously centralized, right? Like if the Federal Reserve or the US government or the nation of Bulgaria announced its own CBDC, it's obvious to people what that represents. Whereas systems like Ethereum or any of the other cryptocurrencies out there other than Bitcoin, they claim to be decentralized. They claim to be sort of this similar power to the people type of movement of decentralized money. And often they're not. Often they are socially centralized. Even if they're running on tens of thousands of computers and servers around the world, maybe a small group of people can exert influence over the protocol, over the rules of that system. And they've changed the rules of Ethereum many times. At least 4 times since it was created, they have changed its monetary policy. So no one knows how many ETH will ever exist. And I have a hunch that they're going to decide to change those rules again in the near future. And so it's still central banking. It's just that it's being done by, engineers with laptops on the internet and software instead of central bankers with suits and ties in Washington, D.C. But it still is centralized control. And so I worry about that. I think it's important to call out those differences in those systems, because otherwise clever nation states could just direct people towards these centralized alternatives. They could embrace systems like Ethereum and discourage people from systems like Bitcoin that can make them free. And so that's one thing that I know took me a long time to see. I was very excited about Ethereum in the early days. I went through my journey of holding many different altcoins and discovering things directly. And now I don't. Now I just hold Bitcoin, and I think it's the best hope for a better future.
To me, Bitcoin is completely saying that, and I just remembered about Fidelity. Literally, they had a report just recently, literally saying Bitcoin and everything else or something like Bitcoin first, whatever it was called. But to me, literally, it's the same way. The way I see Bitcoin is Bitcoin. We know what Bitcoin is. To me, all the altcoins, I look at them as startups. I look at them as companies, which again, just like any other company, it's centralized. There is someone on top of it, right? Like a leader or something, like CEO. And so that's it. To me, Ethereum is kind of like a layer 2 to Bitcoin, right? It's a layer 2, it's smart contracts. That's what it is, kind of, and that's it. So I agree. No, to me, Bitcoin is there is this famous joke that I've heard many times about what is the difference between Bitcoin conferences and Ethereum conferences. On the Bitcoin conferences, someone says, I hold Bitcoin, and someone else, oh yeah, I hold Bitcoin too, and someone else, oh yeah, I hold Bitcoin too. And on the Ethereum, oh, I'm building this and building that and building that. And just the way the joke presents it is how boring Bitcoin it is and how little you can do. And Ethereum is so exciting. There's so much innovation, so many things happening, and so on and so on and so on. Yeah, sure, I can buy that. There's so much innovation happening in, and now for the viewers, the protocol-owned liquidity, hashtag Wonderland, hashtag Sifu, whatever his name was. Do you know the drama or not really?
No.
On Ethereum, there was this protocol that was made where the idea was the protocol, the smart contract, owns the liquidity. So you put money into it, you take a token out. Anyway, it's complex to explain it. It's literally a very, the most complex Ponzinomics you've heard in your life. But the idea is you get a bunch of interest rate on a token that the price can go down. So at the end, you just have to think about how much the price is going down, how much the interest rate. Anyway. And at the end, it turned out it was 100% centralized. A guy was running the whole show. He ran away with the money and stuff like that. Anyway, but long story short, my point is the following. Yes, Bitcoin is boring. All you can do, I'm literally, the way I present Bitcoin is like, Bitcoin is the stupidest, how's it called, cryptocurrency in the world. I can explain it in a few sentences. All you can do is mine it. It's a blockchain. You can send it, you can receive it, you can generate a new address. That's about it. And then there's the Lightning Network for much faster and cheaper transactions. Yeah, sure. It's that simple. Nothing else to it. But just that solve such a big problem that we discussed just now in the whole podcast. So my point is, it doesn't need to be that fancy, that complex, and with that much innovation in order to represent such a big potential change in the world. Like for instance, right now in Bulgaria, the how's it called? The real estate, right? The flats, the houses and so on, they cost the flat that I mean, the rent for it, I have to pay it for 50 years until I pay out the property. So it's a horrible investment if I'm gonna buy it, right? Because 50 years, like in 50 years, I'm not sure if this building's still gonna exist or it's gonna collapse, So it's literally cheaper for me just to pay the rent. And my point is that it's such a big housing bubble, in my opinion, just because we use, especially in Bulgaria, property as store of value. And there is, so many different things that people use of store of value. Why? Because money, paper, fiat is not the dependable store of value. That's it. So my point is, and everything that we talked about, not just store of value, but being, having uncensorable and money that cannot be stolen from the government, from you, that just completely changes the game. So it's not about how complex or fancy Bitcoin is, it's just about, with this simplicity, how the rest of the world has to reposition around Bitcoin.
Yeah, I think Bitcoin can completely transform how we store value, as we touched on. And so all of these other assets that are being used as stores of value, real estate, and in some cases, even complex financial instruments, 401ks and retirement funds. Like, no matter what job you have today, if you're a carpenter or a dentist or a mechanic, you often need to have a financial advisor, and you need to think about all of this financial complexity. And we've normalized that, we sort of don't question it because we're just so used to it. But that's not how it was for most of history. And that's not how it should be. You shouldn't have to do a bunch of complicated financial gymnastics just to protect what you've earned.
Everyone has to be a freaking investment genius. The taxi driver and the hairdresser, everyone. If you want to save money, the bank doesn't give you an interest rate that is higher or at least equal to the inflation. So literally everyone has to have two jobs, being a professional investor or being 100% dependent on someone else, that if he doesn't even beat inflation, he doesn't owe you anything. Like, that's the thing that I'll never give money to someone else to manage unless he signs a contract where he says he's gonna pay me unless he beats inflation. And I don't mean the CPI, I mean the real inflation.
Yeah. And so I think Bitcoin represents just a simpler, better future that's more accessible to people, where you can be good at something. You can be good at whatever your craft of choice is, whatever you love to do. And if you create value in the world, then you can protect that value and it'll even grow. And you don't need to worry about all the mental overhead of how do I keep this stuff secure? Because Bitcoin finally offers people security.
Game theory. You did say the word a bit earlier, like 15-20 minutes ago.
Yeah.
El Salvador being the first country to accept Bitcoin as legal tender. Miami and New York mayors going on a race who is going to be more Bitcoin friendly city. Then we have the just recently governor of Colorado, or I don't know, candidate to us or whatever, again saying, oh, it was the candidate of governor for Texas says, if I'm being chosen as governor, I'm gonna make a Bitcoin legal tender within the country, and so on and so on. And now Russia and India did a 180 from, oh, we're banning Bitcoin and all exchanges and everything, to, listen, actually we realized we're a bit stupid, we're just gonna tax it, dudes. Like, yeah, good morning, you can just tax it when people convert it back into fiat. So they're like, oh, we're gonna tax it 30%. And Russia going again 180 and going out with these headlines, mining can create jobs. Russia has a bit of an advantage around Bitcoin mining and so on. What do you think? What's happening? Where are we at the game theory? What's to come?
It seems like a really exciting point in the game theory and in nation state adoption. So it seems like more and more politicians are starting to embrace Bitcoin and to realize how beneficial that can be for their campaigns. And it seems like states are going to, nations and states, and even at the city level, are just going to try to attract entrepreneurs and benefit from this type of technology. So Silicon Valley was wildly successful, and the state of California was wildly successful despite its horrible governance for the last many decades, because it was early to embrace the internet. And so I think right now, everybody's looking around and starting to realize the opportunity that's out there if they're the first to embrace the internet of money. And even I live in Arizona, and in the last few weeks, Arizona made some headlines by, we have a state senator named Wendy Roberts, and she proposed a bill to make Bitcoin legal tender within the state, which is pretty exciting. So I think now people are starting to see Arizona in that same category of Texas and Florida and Wyoming, and these states that are very friendly to this type of innovation. I hope to see another nation state follow El Salvador soon. So, El Salvador is doing great things, in my opinion. I love what Bukele, the president there, is doing, and especially with his responses to organizations like the IMF that are pressuring El Salvador not to use Bitcoin. But I worry because they are just one small country, and so there's if bigger countries don't want them to do that, then they could do bad things to that country to discourage them from doing that. And there's strength in numbers. So I want to see more countries embrace Bitcoin as legal tender soon. I hope that, Argentina and Russia and Turkey and, ironically, some countries that are sanctioned most heavily have the strongest incentive to embrace this stuff because it's challenging for them otherwise to participate in the global economy and to do large international settlements of wealth. And so maybe the harder that countries like Russia and Iran are sanctioned and tried to pressure into settling oil contracts in certain currencies, perhaps the more it will spur them to think about whether Bitcoin makes sense. And that could get pretty wild pretty quickly. I think when you get to that nation state level of adoption, then in terms of just potential impact on the price and impact on geopolitics, I think it's going to be exciting times to be alive. It already is. And I think that China's ban of Bitcoin mining is going to go down as one of the biggest geopolitical blunders of our lifetime. They were dominant in that sector and had a really good kind of vertically integrated infrastructure pipeline for this internet of money with Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining. And I think in 20 years, we'll look back and realize that they damaged their national security by encouraging that Bitcoin mining power to move elsewhere.
Again, in the Fidelity report, not the last one, but a bit early one from January, like 5th, 7th of January or something, they talked about 2021 and what happened. And one of the things that they highlighted was the move of the Bitcoin network. And they said how analysts were saying that they were expecting the hash power to return a lot slower than it did, because until the end of the year, we're already at a new all-time high at the hash rate. And they said that there was, in the back of the heads of all the Bitcoiners, the small chance that indeed, let's say, the Chinese government can knock on the doors of all the miners and say, we're doing a 51% attack, you're gonna mine the way we tell you to mine, and so on. And now that attack, that possibility, that attack vector, that risk is gone. And it was again in the Fidelity report highlighting that and just showing how literally Bitcoin from year on year on year on year, it becomes a better investment. Even though the price is higher, it's just a better investment. Because today, Bitcoin at 40K or whatever, it's a lot less riskier and a lot of better investment than it was, I don't know, let's say at 4,000 back in 2017. Because of 2017, we started at the bottom of the bear at 200, we go to 4,000, we're already at 20x, right? And we continue going up to 20K, and then we crash down to 3K. And back then, just like, what is it, like 5 years ago, we didn't have Fidelity covering so extensively Bitcoin. We didn't have all the politicians into Bitcoin. We didn't have the freaking banks offering Bitcoin in their application. Didn't have the PayPal adoption. Didn't have the Visa, the MasterCard also standing behind crypto. So it's just, I don't know, like talking about exciting times, like it's just crazy. Literally a week in crypto feels like a month in the normal world.
It's funny how true that is. Bitcoin feels cheaper to me today at 43,000 US dollars than it did at 400 US dollars or 4,000 US dollars, because as you said, it's just been de-risked in so many ways. Now we have large financial institutions dealing with it. We have countries embracing it as legal tender. It's clearly here to stay. This thing is not going to zero. And it used to be kind of fashionable, right? If you were a journalist or a tech critic to say, oh, you know, Bitcoin's gonna become worthless. And maybe between 6 and 12 years ago, you could get a lot of people who would buy into that, and you would get, you know, you get a lot of kind of social credit for making those kinds of statements. And now it's the opposite. Now, if you genuinely believe that Bitcoin's going to zero, then that's like a sign that you're not paying attention. It's becoming well understood that it's more likely to go to many millions of dollars than it is to go to zero. And so used to get laughed at for investing in Bitcoin, and I think now you get laughed at for not investing in Bitcoin. Increasingly, the trend is more and more toward that every day.
Absolutely, yeah. So listen, we're on the same page. We understand Bitcoin. We know how important it is to the world. We understand like what problem does it solve? And it's such a complex thing to explain. Even if you ask me like what problem does Bitcoin solve, it solves literally the fabric of reality. There's like so many different things that are messed up today just because of money. Because again, money is time. Time is you being young and then being old. That's what time is. Anyway, but tell me, if something is to ruin Bitcoin, is to stop this revolution, do you think that there is something on the list? Because I remember I do have a clip, something like, that's it, we won. I can't remember even what was the event at the time that happened, because there was so many big events that happened in the past 12 months that after each one of them, like I remember when PayPal announced Bitcoin integration, I was like, that's it, we won. And here's why: because I knew that PayPal are not doing this because of the good of their heart. They're like, oh, we like Bitcoin, want the Bitcoin revolution to happen, we're gonna support it. Like, no, they saw what Cash App did, they saw the billions of profit, they're like, in revenue, like, all right, that's it, we have to do it apparently. These guys are printing money, we have to be a competitor to them, we'll be selling Bitcoin of our application. And then the US banks, whatever it was, JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, so like, okay, that's it, PayPal went in, so we must go in now, otherwise we're gonna lose our clients, and so on. And that's the domino, that's literally the domino that started falling. And at that time, again, I was thinking just like it was domino after domino. Every time you see it and say we won. And what you said about the politicians and realizing how beneficial to their campaign Bitcoin can be, this is what I when I covered the Texas candidate for governor, I said, like, that guy gets it. Like, there are people who are pro Bitcoin and people who are against it. And he knows everyone who doesn't want Bitcoin, who thinks it's drug money, it's illegal money, it's fake, it's going to zero, he's not gonna vote for this person when he says, I'm gonna make Bitcoin legal tender if I get elected. But the guy made his choice. He did run the numbers, and that's it. The Bitcoin community is large enough now that you better have them on your side instead of against you.
Absolutely, yeah. And the more that becomes true, the more bullish it is for Bitcoin. When it comes to like, have we won and how to view that, I go back and forth. I actually think it's important to almost be of two different minds simultaneously on that. Because on one hand, yes, I think Bitcoin is hard to stop, unstoppable. I think it's the future, and I don't really see a way that they can stop it. I can see all kinds of ways that they could slow down adoption and use the propaganda machine to confuse people, make it take longer for people to find Bitcoin and understand the type of freedom that it offers. But I can't really see a big, like, fatal flaw in it. However, despite that belief, I think one of the biggest strengths of Bitcoin is the sort of critical thinking and like almost kind of what's the term I'm looking for? Combative thinking or antagonistic thinking of Bitcoiners, where they are very security minded. And so there's almost this level of paranoia, at least high awareness among Bitcoiners of threats, like who is a bad actor. If you act in bad faith towards the Bitcoin network or the Bitcoin community, then the community will notice that and they will kind of punish that behavior. And so that functions as a pretty powerful immune system for Bitcoin. And I think that's important. And so I think one threat could be too much complacency. If too many people got too arrogant and just believed that it is unstoppable, then maybe it becomes a little bit less unstoppable because of that. And so I think just remaining diligent in thinking about how to foster adoption of this, how to be sure that it doesn't become more centralized than we want it to be, either in like operation of nodes on the network or mining on the network or even just custody of Bitcoin over time, then I think a lot about the early internet days, and some of it was before I was directly involved in the internet, but I bet that there were a lot of engineers in those days who saw the power of protocols like the email protocol and the web protocol, and they probably envisioned this future where none of the internet is censored because everybody is going to be running their own server, and it's all just going to be like individual to individual. And so everybody should be running their own email server. And they would probably be sad to see this future where Google and Gmail control so much of the email ecosystem, And so I think Bitcoin has some incentives that make it a little bit more resistant to that type of centralization, but I think there's still a risk that it could be that big corporations could try to control the supply, the stock of Bitcoin, the technology behind Bitcoin more and more. And I think it's important to just stay aware. As a community, we need to build tech that fights against that and that offers easy to use solutions such that we don't end up in this future that's more centralized than we want it to be.
I have this saying, I feel like I'm with the right crowd. I remember in Bitcoin 2021, the Miami conference, Jack Dorsey said, if I wasn't working on Twitter, I would be working on Bitcoin. And now a year later, he is working on Bitcoin. That TBD, to be decentralized, I think that was the name of the exchange that they want to build, the fiat on-ramp, the mining machine, the open source, the hardware wallet, and everything. So again, that's it, just having these bright minds, engineers, assisting, doing their best to help the ecosystem move things forward and bring additional innovation so we can straighten up the network as much as we can. One of the questions that I personally don't have the answer to, and I would like to ask you for what's your take on that, is proof of work, Bitcoin mining, block rewards. At the moment, the block rewards, there is this tweet, I don't know for whom it is, I think Dan Helt or someone, he says how, the block rewards are not gonna be enough, have been afoot for the past 10 years or whatever, and I agree, yes, the block reward value in dollar terms is going up and up and up, each halving. And the hash rate is going up, the decentralization of the miners is going up, everything's perfect so far. It is true. And I understand that so far, whoever was fighting about that so far have been wrong. But let's say, because it escalates quickly, like 50 years from now or whatever it was, I think it was like something like 2050, I think it was, will be the last time that the block reward will be over a Bitcoin or something like that. Or 20, I don't think it's 2030, maybe just a second. So now we're at 6 and 25. So it's gonna be like 3, after that's gonna be 1.5. That's it. We're almost there in 3 halves. That's in 12 years, right? Like that's nothing. It's 2022. Like what? 2024 is the next halving, so it's gonna be like before 2040. So anyway, and my point is that 2050 will be already at 0.25 per Bitcoin or something per block. I mean, Bitcoin per block, and maybe it still will be enough. But eventually, and I don't mean 1,000 years from now. I mean 40 years from now, when the block reward is 0.00 something. I understand it. A lot of things happened that I personally did not foresee. I've learned about mining so much last year. About, let's say, mining off of flared gas, or just mining off renewables, just understanding how the grid system works, just understanding how we produce a lot more energy than you consume, and you can use just the excess energy and so on. I get it. So many things have happened to me, and I get it. Still though, I feel like there will come a time where it will literally become unprofitable to mine, and at the moment everyone who's mining, he's a company, he's doing it for profit.
Yeah, I'm optimistic that the incentives will I think it's important that mining not be altruistic, right? As you said, there needs to be an objective financial incentive in order to mine. And so I see some critical things needed there. As one, the price of Bitcoin in fiat terms needs to keep increasing. Such that it's extremely compelling to mine even those tiny slivers of Bitcoin, even less than 1 BTC, because that represents such a large amount of wealth. And then also that I think transactions continue, like the continuation of a fee market for block space is very important too. So if there were not enough demand for block space and you could effectively transact for free all of the time, like zero fees, zero sats per VByte, then that would probably indicate a concerning situation to me. I think that would effectively mean that there's not demand for this scarce resource. And so hopefully we'll see those fees increase over time, right? Somewhat, or like part of the design is that as the issuance of new Coinbase rewards and new Bitcoin goes down, the fees that the miners get to keep from processing transactions goes up. Because early on, it was like you could do zero fees all the time, and now you can no longer do that, right? You have to attach some fee. And so as more financial institutions and banks hopefully start doing large transfers of wealth and settlements, then maybe blocks will always be full, and there will always be demand and fees that will kind of offset that decrease.
As from June last year or whatever it was, you can see the transaction cost of Bitcoin just nosediving and going to almost zero. I haven't done over 2 satoshis per byte transaction for the past 1 year or whatever, and some people say it's literally just because of some exchanges finally adopting Segwit or batching their transactions or something. And the thing is though, I understand how important block space is. Literally, this is what blockchains sell. They sell block space. And at the moment, what it proves is that there isn't that much demand for Bitcoin block space. There isn't that many transactions happening. There is a lot of speculation and a lot of understanding. When I say speculation, I mean like, you know, like you buy it because you think it's gonna go up. So it's a speculation. But at the same time, there is understanding what problem it solves. And this is why you speculate that most probably it's gonna go up. But in the future, as right now, I'm still a user who interacts with the blockchain, right? So in the future, let's say 50 years from now or whatever, what you're saying is the main blockchain will be only used by governments, by banks, or by something else for very large sums of money.
Yeah, that would be my expectation. I don't think it will be practical to send, you know, a few fiat dollars worth of BTC on chain in a few years. That's or in decades, right?
Yeah, but that's the block war. Again, we are going back onto the should we increase the block space, and like if I bought a gum from the store, like does that need to be to live on the blockchain forever, right? Like that's unnecessary information.
Right.
And speaking about that, you know, like expanding onto it, I guess it makes sense. Why does the blockchain need to know forever that I took my money off Kraken and put it on my ledger, right? Because this is the transaction that the majority of the time doing. So I kind of get it. So with the time, it's gonna be just more and more and more. How's it called? What's the word? Filtering, you know, for the correct transactions that are really important need to be on the blockchain, and just users like us are gonna live on the Lightning Network forever, I would imagine.
Yeah, I think so. And I think there will be, like right now in the last few years, I think looking at on-chain fees, it's been difficult to see that trend and that trajectory because we've had so many innovations related to how block space is used, such as SegWit and especially such as layer 2 protocols like Lightning. And so how much of the low fees right now are because we introduced those things recently, right? And so maybe that has distorted some of the data around that trend. But over time, I still expect to see block space become scarce. I still expect on-chain transactions to be largely the domain of just big transfers of wealth where you need really high security and a guarantee that it cannot be reversed. So purchasing real estate, doing settlements among financial institutions, that sort of thing. And then off-chain protocols like Lightning, I think are really well positioned for smaller day-to-day commerce. And I'm also optimistic that it's not a threat to Bitcoin's security model to have more commerce move to those higher layers, because I think those higher layers not only absorb the commerce that we have today, but it will also create this new demand for the movement of money that we've just never had before, because it's never been technologically possible. We've never been able to do micropayment use cases before. You've never been able to send a few cents, like fractions of a penny, to someone in another country instantly and trustlessly. And now that we can, maybe this protocol for money gets used in all these fascinating ways that are difficult for us to even conceptualize. You know, maybe we have a machine-to-machine economy where sending an email or loading a web page or calling an API on the internet all cost a small sliver of Bitcoin. And therefore, there's the periodic need to settle after many of those transactions occur. At some point, you'll ultimately want to write that back into the base layer blockchain. And so I think the potential demand that those types of use cases could create will still have a healthy amount of overall volume, even at the base layer.
Amazing. Thank you so much for visiting us. It was really lovely speaking with you. Any final words? And if anyone from the audience wants to follow you, where can he find you?
Yeah, I appreciate you having me. This has been a really fun discussion. Would love to do it again sometime. And I'm pretty active on Twitter. I tweet mostly about Bitcoin stuff. My Twitter ID is sthenc, so it's sthenc. And my DMs are open too. So if anyone is curious about any aspect of Bitcoin, I try to be fairly interactive and accessible on there. I also do some investing into Bitcoin startups. That's kind of my primary focus day to day nowadays. And so if there are entrepreneurs who are founders who are hearing this and they are building on Bitcoin toward a Bitcoin future, then that's the kind of stuff that I love to talk about. So happy to connect with anyone.
So guys, you heard it. This was just the introductory podcast. We're going to have an episode 2 where we're going to be focusing on Bitcoin startups.
There we go. Yeah, love to.
All right. Cheers, guys. Have a good evening. It's 10 p.m. in Bulgaria. Have a good evening, and we'll see each other tomorrow on Добро утро, Crypto.